Our first speaker today is Rabbi Dov Lipman. So Rabbi Dov Lipman was in 2019 elected. He was elected to the 19th Knesset in 2013. He was the first American-born MK in 30 years, member of Knesset, meaning that meant he spoke English. He is a prolific author. He's written books about Judaism in Israel. He holds rabbinic ordination from the Israel College and a master's in education from Johns Hopkins University. He moved to Israel in 2015, so he uniquely understood the challenges of Olim, and he works in education with delegations visiting, and he also tries to help integrate the Orthodox population into Israeli society. In 2021, he started an organization called Yad La'olim, and it's a not-for-profit organization that helps immigrants with their acclimation to Israel. He lobbies parliament, and he certainly helped my family. He certainly helps so many Olim I know, and he certainly understands the challenges of those of us moving to Israel. So Dov is going to be our first speaker, and then we will then go on. He's going to provide an framework for today, and then we're going to introduce our 4 survivors, followed by Hatikva. So Stacy, you can bring on Dov, please. And please forgive us if we have a delay.
Thank you so much, Jody. It is so meaningful to be here with all of you on Yom HaZikaron. Thank you to all the organizations that have joined together to remember the IDF soldiers and the victims of terror who have lost their lives so that we can be here in the state of Israel. I remember growing up in the United States, Memorial Day was not a day of significant meaning at all. It was the beginning of the summer. I certainly remember hearing about people going to the beaches, and it really wasn't a day filled with meaning. Here in Israel, it is one of the most solemn days of the year. It's one of the most meaningful days of the year as we come together and we hear about soldiers who lost their lives, and we hear about terror victims who have lost their lives, making that sacrifice so that we can be here in the state of Israel today. I must tell all of you that as someone who grew up in America and moved to Israel later in life, I wasn't as closely connected to the suffering and the losses that so many native Israelis have gone through. But unfortunately, in the 18 years since I've moved to Israel, we have been exposed to many of those losses, and certainly the Olim community just recently with the tragedy in the D family, we've certainly become very exposed to loss and to the tragedy and to what Memorial Day is all about. In my own family, just in my 2 older children have gotten married, and in their families, there are super close relatives who lost and who were killed in tragic circumstances and terror attacks. When I think about Memorial Day, and I'm going to talk about Memorial Day going into Yom HaAtzmaut in a moment, because Israel does this in the most brilliant of ways, starting with Memorial Day and then going right into Independence Day. These lives were not lost for nothing. They were lost so that we can have Independence Day and celebrate the Jewish state. But I want to focus in on one story which touched my heart very deeply, does every single year, and hopefully it can be meaningful for you as well. And that is the story of Max Steinberg. I was a member of Knesset and the only former American in the Knesset, and we suffered the losses in Operation Protective Edge in 2014. And I got a call a few days into a war about a lone soldier from California who was killed. And the Steinberg family came to Israel to bury Max and told his story. And we all learned about the story of Max Steinberg. a young man who was in college in California, had every reason just to stay there and enjoy whatever life was. His brother and sister were going on a birthright trip to Israel and said to Max, come along with us. Max went with them on this birthright trip. And during that time in Israel, Max Steinberg fell in love with Israel and specifically fell in love with Israelis. And he had every plan when he came to Israel to just go back and continue his life in California. But something touched him so deeply when he was here. And I even said at his funeral, I said, Max heard the words of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses, at the end of Sefer Bamidbar, the end of Book of Numbers, when two tribes wanted to stay on the eastern side of the Jordan River and didn't want to cross into Israel. Moses looks at them and says, are your brothers going to go to war and you're going to stay here? No. You want to settle on the eastern side of the Jordan? That's your right. But you're going to go fight in Israel first with your brothers. That's what Moses commanded them. That's what they did. Max Steinberg could not be at peace with himself, knowing that his brothers and sisters in Israel were fighting for their lives, and he would just go back to college in California. And he went home, he packed his things up, he went back to Israel, enlisted in the IDF, worked really, really hard to get into the Golani unit. He was a sharpshooter in the Golani unit. Some unbelievable stories about a young man who didn't know Hebrew and it has to make it in the army. So for example, they're standing in front of their commander. The commander says, everyone run immediately to the mitvach. The mitvach is the shooting range. But Max Steinberg, new to Israel, new to Hebrew, he heard mitbach, which is kitchen. And he goes running to the kitchen. Stories like this, comical stories, but also stories that got him in trouble. But he weathers all those storms and he gets to the point where he's a sharpshooter in Golani. And in 2014, the three teenage boys were kidnapped and murdered. Israel arrested members of Hamas who were involved in the kidnapping. Hamas starts sending missiles into Israel. And we have no choice but to go into Gaza. And Max and his unit went into Gaza, and very tragically and sadly, Max was killed, defending the people of Israel and fighting for Israel. And his family comes to Israel. This is his mother and father's first time in Israel. They didn't have any significant family or friend. They had no family, but no real friends in Israel. And we thought that we would have a small graveside ceremony at Mount Herzl in Jerusalem, where I was this morning for the siren, and actually did a video call with Max's parents to be able to be part of that siren experience as well. And we get to Har Herzl on a summer afternoon, on a work day, and there are 35,000 Israelis there. 35,000 Israelis heard about a lone soldier from California who sacrificed his life, gave up his life for our people to defend us, and they came to give respect. It was this collective hug that the people of Israel gave to the Steinberg family. And I have to tell you, I visit Max's grave often on my way back from Jerusalem. Almost always I see groups there, and people are coming to give honor to Max. That's the kind of people that we are. We recognize people who have given up their lives, the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have Israel. But as we think about that Max Steinberg story, instead of losing ourselves completely in sorrow, let's think for a moment about that story of a young man who said, I'm going to be with my people, and I'm willing to risk my life, and he's lost his life for his people. The incredible inspiration that we can get from that. On Max's tombstone, it has a line from his favorite singer, Bob Marley. Live for yourself, live in vain. Live for others, live again. Max Steinberg lived for others, and he lives again. He's a hero of Israel, which leads us into Yom HaAtzmaut. This amazing story of a people who suffered for 2,000 years, came from persecution all around the world, and rebuilt this incredible country. Exactly as God says will happen in the Bible. that will be exiled, but we will come back and this country will flourish again. And there are ups and downs along the way, and there are sacrifices that are made along the way. But we are blessed to be part of this incredible story of the Jewish people, the most incredible story in world history, of a people who are exiled from their indigenous homeland and come back after 2,000 years after being scattered and persecuted all around the world. And we, all of us, are blessed to be part of this process. Max Steinberg and the Steinberg family are blessed to be part of that process. We who are living in Israel are blessed to be part of that process. And you, wherever you are around the world, by supporting Israel, you are part of that process. So as we are here on Memorial Day, and we're thinking about those who made the ultimate sacrifice, this is the moment as we start heading towards Yom HaAtzmaut, for all of us to think about what are we doing for Israel. And I'm sure we all are doing something. But let's, in the memory of those who perished, who were murdered, who were killed, so that we can be here, in their memory, let's commit ourselves to do even more for Israel. To those who can, to make Israel the place where you live and to make Aliyah. For those who can't make Aliyah, to support Israel by coming here, by volunteering here, by serving here, by contributing to causes in Israel. Raise our children to make Aliyah and eventually join them in retirement. But one thing is for sure, as we live in these momentous times, and as we think about those who have perished and who have been murdered, let's find something inside of ourselves that says we're going to do even more for Israel, and we're going to be part of this incredible story. And if we do that, with God's help, that will also be an aliyah neshama, that will elevate the souls of those who we are memorializing today. Thank you to Jody and to Sarah for this program. We at Yad L'Olim are so proud to be part of this. And thank you to all of you who have joined. I hope that you learn so much from the presenters who are coming after me, and that we all grow together and both have the mourning process for those who have died and have been killed, and then get to that point where we can celebrate at Yom HaAtzmaut, because we recognize the incredible gift that we have called the State of Israel, and we can all do so much for that State of Israel. Wishing you a meaningful rest of Memorial Day and a happy Yom HaAtzmaut.